Welcome to my presentation on the crucial elements of grading and rubrics. In this presentation, we will talk about the purpose of assessments, their benefits, different points to consider, alternative and authentic assessments, the value of journals, when and how to assess, the value of rubrics, the Charlotte Danielson framework for teaching, the value of peer review, and how to assess group work. So assessments can enhance the learning experience of students. Assessments help communicate your goals to the students so that they can learn more effectively. It helps you identify misunderstandings so that you can change the direction of your instruction or come back to something that you've taught. It can improve pacing so that you know if you need to slow down and go over some information again, or if you can speed up because the students are getting it. And it also helps you to assign grades. There are several benefits to assessments. One is it helps students remember what they learned. It also helps it to go deeper. It provides students with feedback to know how they are performing in your class. It also helps you as a teacher to be able to plan with pacing and with what to include and what needs to be remediated. It helps with evaluating students so that you can give them their grades, and it also aids in meeting accreditation requirements at the college level because it will prove that what you're teaching is what the students need to learn at this level. So some points to consider when you are giving assessments is you will need as a teacher to determine your goals ahead of time and then match assessments with your goals. If you want to teach students higher level thinking skills, you don't want to just be assessing with multiple choice and fill in the blank answers. You want to use embedded assessments through the course, so as you're teaching each day, you want to give quick assessments to see if they've understood what you've just taught them. You also want to teach students how to self-assess and provide real-world relevance in the different activities that the students are engaging in. And you also want to gear the instruction and the assessments toward applying their knowledge instead of just memorizing facts. If you use authentic assessments and different things besides just those summative tests, it will allow for triangulation of data. So here's an example of different data that you can use when you're assessing students. You can give observations such as assessment checklists and anecdotal notes. You can have students create products, and we'll explore many of those in some future slides. And also you can figure out what students understand through conversations as you're assessing students in groups and as you speak with them one-on-one. Some alternative assessments that students can be given would be observation, projects and written assignments. For example, the raft on the right is a way that you can change up the assignments that students do. They can create something based on a different role, such as a lawyer or a historical figure. They can present it to a different audience besides just the teacher. They could pretend they're presenting it to politicians or a principal or classmates. The format can change. It could be a brochure, a song, or an interview. And the topic can be varied. For example, if you're teaching about careers, students could choose a specific career that they wanted to research so that they are able to have buy-in and autonomy so that they are more apt to get more out of their project that they're working on. Other assessments would include simulations, hands-on experiences, lab reports, and annotated bibliographies. And these bibliographies are a great resource for students as they're doing their coursework, and they can be shared resources between classmates. Additional assessments can include web page design, research projects, presentations such as this one, portfolios which show student growth throughout a course, and also a variety of projects. Graphic organizers, such as the one on the right. These can be filled in quickly to see if the students are getting the concepts, and also journals, which we'll talk about on the next slide. So these are some things about journals. They develop critical reflection, so you're able to kind of take what you've been learning and apply it and see how it impacts your own life. It increases self-awareness to know things that are impacting you with what you're learning, and it helps you to understand what your background knowledge is, and you can kind of mesh it all together and have a greater understanding of who you are in relation to what you're learning. To be most effective for journals, the professor needs to set clear expectations of what they want to see in the journals. They may need to provide training to students who haven't journaled before. It's important to give practice with feedback, which our professor is very good at doing very promptly, and it's very helpful to the student to be able to know if they need to make any adjustments. And it is also important for the professor to have a positive relationship with the students if journals are going to be most effective. So when should we assess? Many times it's helpful to do a pre-assessment, so prior to teaching new content, to see what they already know and see if when you've taught them the information, if they've actually learned something new. During class, we in my school district give formative assessments. We're told to teach for 15 minutes and assess for 5, where we're putting into practice what we've learned, we're applying it and making sure that we understand the information before we get so much information we don't even know where the gaps are if there's something missing. There are several tools online that help to assess quickly. There's a website called Kahoot where you can put in different questions and multiple choice answers, and students choose it like a game, and then you can see right away how many of the students have understood that concept and how many people don't, and then you can immediately give feedback on what the correct answer is. SurveyMonkey, you could do quick surveys to see where students are, and also Nearpod is very interactive. Students can actually write their answers and project them on the screen, and you can see multiple answers at the same time. Also, you can assess at the end of class. On the right, there's a 3-2-1, so students are to list 3 things that they remember from the lesson, give 2 examples of what they learned, and then write a question that they still have or something that they're confused about that helps them to go back and think about what they've learned and help them process and remember, so that it doesn't just go in one ear and out the other. And Mikichi said that you should assess at least twice per semester, but I would say you could even assess twice per day. So authentic assessments or performance assessments help teachers gather information about individual and group performance in order to diagnose student problems, provide feedback, make adjustments, and show growth. They can be graded, and how they are framed impacts motivation and depth of processing. The more real they seem, the more likely the students will be able to really process what they're learning. Now onto rubrics. So rubrics are a carefully planned assessment tool. It divides work into categories. It gives clear quality descriptions, and it helps students to see how they met expectations. And these rubrics can be used for just about any task. All of the alternative assessments that I mentioned, and even summative assessments, rubrics can be used to help with the grading process. This is an example of a TDA rubric that I created for my elementary students. It was a way that I could show that the students were meeting their objectives and improving throughout the school year on their writing. So there are 4 basic elements to rubrics. One is a task description. What is a student expected to do? There's the components of the task that you're going to grade and tell what your expectations are for that. There will be descriptions of the range of performance. For example, in mine, we'd start at below basic up to advanced, and then a scale such as numbers 1 through 4. There are many benefits to rubrics. One is it allows teachers to give more challenging assignments because it cuts down on the grade time, because the expectations are clearly laid out. It also helps with consistency for the same reason. It allows students to see right away their strengths and areas for growth through formative feedback. Through this, it also helps students to self-assess how they're doing. It reduces student anxiety for projects because they know clearly what to expect and what the teacher wants them to do. It reinforces their goals, the teacher's goals for the course and the projects, and it enhances communication within departments because the same rubric can be used in multiple classrooms. So the 3 main purposes of rubrics are to assess authentic assessments, to grade participation and group work, and to provide expectations for tests and quizzes. A word about Charlotte Danielson. She provided a framework for teaching that has been turned into a popular tool for evaluating K through 12th grade teachers using a rubric, which was not her original intent. She wanted to help teachers understand the domains that were what effective teachers would be able to successfully do so that they could do their best teaching. And these domains include planning and preparation, classroom environment, professional responsibilities, and instruction. And here's, at a glance, what are included in the different domains. If you look at each of these sections, you will see that under each part there is something related to assessments. So in domain 1, if you look at 1F, you need to be able to design student assessments. In domain 2, in establishing a culture for learning, there is an aspect of assessments. In instruction, at 3D, using assessments in instruction, and domain 4, maintaining accurate records. So assessment is part of a balanced teacher portfolio. Unfortunately, it has been used to evaluate teachers, but it also has a rubric for that. So it helps teachers to know what would be expected of a highly effective teacher and who would be considered an ineffective teacher. So switching gears, I wanted to talk a little bit about peer reviews. So online there's a tool called a calibrated peer review, and in this it allows students to look at other classmates' work and do a review on their work, and then when they get to the point where they're able to review correctly on others' work, they are able to then learn how to review their own work and self-assess. So this is a good tool for helping students to be able to grow and assess how they are performing on their own. Another aspect of assessments is assessing group work. Group work can be tricky because different people might give different effort into the group work. So when you are assessing group work, you need to determine what you're assessing. Are you going to be assessing the final product, or the group process, or a mix of both? So as a teacher, you need to determine those values that you want to come out of the group work. In order to help assess, you can have students write individual reports about their thought process to know what they've contributed in creating the final product. And you can also have students describe the work that was contributed by other members, not giving them a grade, but talking about what the students did. And as the teacher gets multiple evaluations from the students in the group, they can see for themselves who was actually kind of slacking and who was putting in a lot of that work for that. And it's important to create assessments together because then the students will have buy-in in how they are evaluated on what they produce. So some test suggestions for creating tests. This is the final part of this presentation. As I mentioned before, it's very helpful to give a pretest to have a baseline. You should give frequent quizzes early on so that students know how they're performing and what adaptations they need to make. A suggestion was made to increase the weight of tests as time progresses. It's useful to include a variety of questions. A suggestion was made that even though it's the most difficult thing to grade, essays should be included in each test, at least one essay question. You can also include multiple choice questions and short answer questions. And then in the parentheses, there's a sample amount of time that each type of question could take so that you can plan your assessments according to how much time is built into your schedule. A caution against using true-false questions was given by Mikichi. She said that a lot of times when you give a true-false test, students remember false questions as true, so it's probably not the best idea to include many true-false questions in your exams. And you also want to make sure you're assessing what you want students to learn. If you want just basic knowledge information, multiple choice questions are fine, but if you want to have students be able to apply what they're learning, you want to include the different types of questions that will show that they're able to think through problems and express effectively a process or whatever it is you want them to create. So this final slide is just a review of Bloom's taxonomy. It's just a reminder that at the baseline there's some knowledge questions, and it works all the way up to students being able to create their own new product. Thank you so much for watching this presentation. I hope it was beneficial to you. Have a great day.